about what's appropriate in terms of if they could ask for their badge number and why that was not given, if there's a reason for that.
So the question was that there was a citizen during the incident that asked for the officer's badge number. And the question is there a process for the badge number and why that information wasn't presented? Officers have numbers on their badges, and I know that's commonplace for people to ask. However, we do not track officers in our agency by their badge numbers. We go by their names, and they have a department code number. It is my expectation that if an officer is asked for their name, that they will identify themselves.
Is the officer on administrative leave now?
The question is the officer on administrative leave now? The answer to that question is no. We are currently working on having the officer actually assigned inside, but not on administrative leave.
I wanted to ask about the press conference. What's the reason that it was held today? This happened a number of days ago. Talk more about why it was important for you to have a press conference like this.
So the question is, why was it important for us to have the press conference today, as it had the incident had occurred several days before? I was made aware of the incident approximately 2 days after it occurred. And since that time, we have had, as you can imagine, much discussion about it. But after having, as I mentioned in my earlier statement, after having questions from both our citizens, I've gotten emails of concern and emails, quite frankly, asking for updates, as well as from our elected officials. I thought that it was necessary at this time that we share as much information as we possibly can now.
I'm Bess Young with the Journal. Communicate many times. You mentioned that people shouldn't be engaging in arguments or with officers or yelling at them or something like that. Have incidents like that been happening, and is that part of the reason you're talking to people now?
So the question is that I mentioned during my earlier statement that I was basically asking citizens not to argue with officers on the side of the road. And has that happened in the past? That has happened in the past, but I'm not just speaking of Winston-Salem. I'm speaking anywhere in our country. If you are stopped by a police officer, my recommendation is that you follow the information, provide the officer with the information that's being requested. If you believe that an officer acted, his conduct was inappropriate, if you believe that an officer was excessive in a use of force, if you believe that anything about the officer's actions were wrong, my request is that you don't argue with the officer on the side of the road. Everybody wants to be safe. Officers have been trained to maintain safety. And so that is never a winner. I want all of us, both our citizens, our residents, our visitors, our motoring public, and our officers to be safe. We have here in Winston-Salem a very robust complaint process. And I ask that if you have that problem, immediately following your contact with the officer, contact the police department. You can contact the emergency number or the non-emergency number and ask for the supervisor or the on-duty field commander. Both the sergeant and the on-duty field commander, the lieutenant, is working for the most part at all times. And if you're not satisfied with what you get from your interactions with those supervisors, then again, you can come down and file a formal complaint with our Professional Standards Division. That is the safe way. That is the way I would prefer that we handle these situations. I can assure you, just like we have in the past, that we will investigate them and we will act appropriately.
That's sufficient. Right.
When you watched the video, what was your initial reaction?
When I watched the video, what was my initial reaction? It was sadness. Basically, I personally would like to see our interactions to be much better, both with our citizens, with our officers, and our officers with our citizens. And so that was my initial reaction. I'll take one more question.
No, Can you say why the officer is still on duty, as opposed to being on administrative leave? Is that a policy procedure thing?
We're about being consistent. So the question is, why is the officer still on duty as opposed to being on administrative duty? Again, we're about being consistent with how we handle these situations. And as I stated to you, we, in this situation, we traditionally had not put an officer on administrative duty in cases as closely related to this one as possible. But we have moved officers into positions where they are still active, but they are not actually in patrol. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Come on, man, just one more.
It's never enough, is it?
If I get one, I'll ask for another.
I know. We're just born that way. Thank you.